was rather irritated because there were 5 empty cushions in the Zendo for the first sitting, and as I understand, folk were, so the service could come in, they were pre-preparing. Is that right? Correct? Yeah. I hadn't understood that. So it was an empty boat on my part. At the same time, I really want to emphasise that. I maybe don't need to tell you this, so forgive me. We run a very kind of relaxed session, you know. We don't take your phones and books at the door, as happens in some places. But equally, as I said yesterday, if you're going to do a retreat, do it. You know, don't be pouring cold water in on the boiling water when. I mean, really commit yourself to it. Otherwise, you know, why make the sacrifice of being here and all the preparation that everybody does to make it possible? If you're going to be caught up with private purpose, then you know you may as well not be here. So I'm sorry, I'm not normally in telling off mode, but I'm really kind of frustrated because I really want you to make the most of this, and the way to make the most of it is to be really committed to it. So although the folk who weren't here for the first sitting, I understand they weren't here, they have at least catalysed me into saying something I wouldn't normally say, so there's something good comes out of it. But yeah, I really like this morning there were people missing from the first sitting, and yeah, it's just frustrating that you don't give yourself to it, for me.
I was up at 4 this morning.
Pardon?
I was up at 4 this morning.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh, you
I was in here at 4.
You've earned merit for everyone else. So thank you. I don't know why, it has nothing to do with what's happening, but I keep thinking of that joke about the man who went to the pet shop and he said, I want to buy some wasps. You know the joke? And the pet shop guy said, we don't sell wasps. He said, well, that's strange, there's some in the window. For some reason it kind of strikes me as our attitude to Sesshin, you know, we kind of we come along to this idea of what we want and it isn't there, you know, it isn't there. Anyway, did anything come up from what I spoke about yesterday? For anyone? Yeah?
I felt as though you were speaking to me.
Pardon?
I felt as though you were describing me.
Oh, really?
When you said that what we have are expectations and they're not met, and that's all suffering is.
Yeah.
Just not met expectations.
Well, I know that our form never satisfies your wish, so I understand how you feel.
Well, they missed the bells when you, after the bows, you were supposed to have a bell just before you put the cushion.
Is that right?
Yeah, it tells us to sit down. Because we should never be standing when you're sat.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's the point.
This is our form, Queen. If you want reference to anything, form, this is the one. Thank you.
I sometimes feel that we have the form despite you.
Well said. I surrender to you.
Those must have been places where the form is not as straight as here. I actually missed it.
Okay.
And I really did miss it.
Yeah. In places where
the form isn't as strict.
It's strict. Oh, you think the form's strict here? Maybe have a word with John, he'll know the stricter form. Is that right, John?
That's pretty strict.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk today about a few things, and I wasn't quite sure how to frame them, but I thought I'd start with the various paradoxes that are present in this practice, and then go on to what I understand was what the Buddha taught. But I've just kind of listed with the following paradoxes that arise. Does everybody feel a strong sense of themselves, of me? Yeah, I guess we do, don't we? Is that right? Everybody feels strongly that they're me, you know, I am. Carry it around with me, yeah. So there's my sense of being me, my attachment to this me, and to the fullness of feeling me, and I think that's the case for us all. How do we live with that together with the realization of emptiness, and or emptiness of a personal self? That's number one paradox. A full feeling of me alongside the inkling or idea or realization or sometimes experience that actually this personal self is a creation. We talk about it a lot, and we also have to be really clear that the Buddha didn't say that there was no self per se. There's no self in the sense that we think there's no self. There's no self and there's no self. That's another paradox. No self and there's no self. So, and then the second paradox is, how do we live the urge to find meaning within meaninglessness? How do we live with the concepts of time and space together with the knowledge that there's an unborn, undying timelessness, which is our own essential nature? So each side of these paradoxes represent one reality, and of course our rational, logical way of being wants to finds it just doesn't make sense. You know, it is a paradox. But though there are two sides of reality, I think most of us choose to be captured. Well, can you say we choose to be captured, or is it inevitable? Is it intrinsic, captured by, or entertained by language and concepts of a valid separate self that's isolated from other selves? Are we captured by that, or does that arise naturally? What do you think? You give in.
We live in a world which says that
we're constantly overwhelmed, aren't we, by the idea. So what I've written is the spiritual practice is about bringing balance to the paradox of a personal me and the natural selfishness that brings, together with the unborn, undying, selfless self. And how do we live a life that has both point and is pointless? Where is the meeting place of these different realities that is not in the either domain but transcends both? Where is that reality? Where is it? Where is the reality that transcends both?
Here.
Yeah, more precisely than here?
Here.
Oh, yeah. Here as opposed to, you mean?
Here.
Yeah, but here where? Who here? Ah, good, yeah, yeah. Here, yeah. Yeah. Tim?
Yeah.
So this paradox and this reality of both sides is only manifested in you, in your body, in how you live, in how you choose to live. And equally, you know, to be stuck on either side, to be stuck on the side of realization and enlightenment, is still being stuck. And just the most of us aren't stuck on that side. We're stuck on this side. So I'm going to go right to the very end of the Buddha's teaching, and then I'm going to go back to what I think he taught. So do folk have an idea? Do you have an idea of being free? Is that right? You can respond. You can say yes, no. Do you have an idea of being free, or do you feel free, or do you feel limited, or bound, or do you feel free?
mostly free.
Free?
Mostly.
Mostly free. Anyone else?
I feel free.
Pardon?
I feel free.
You feel free?
I don't feel free.
Alright, okay.
I
Yeah.
don't.
You don't?
Don't.
You don't?
Varies.
Yeah.
Varies.
Varies, yeah, okay, varies.
Actually, can I just say something? Even when I'm stuck, I still don't feel. I would still say I'm free.
Okay.
Even when I'm struggling, I would still feel free to be stuck or unstuck. Actually.
So what about if your idea of freedom only arises because in the first place you feel trapped? What about if you didn't have the concept of being trapped, you wouldn't feel you were not free, is that right? And how many folk feel limited? Do you feel kind of limited in your life to some degree? Or do you feel that it's an open expanse that you can move freely around in?
I feel grooved.
Feel grooved, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I feel a lot of my sense of freedom I have is conditional.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not free not to die, or I'm not free not to get ill.
You're not free not to die. That's true. It's a very democratic process, isn't it? So it's like freedom and limitation are both concepts that we have. I mean, if we imagine we're not free, if we imagine we're limited, then obviously the other side arises. And this is the interesting paradox of the Buddha's teaching, because the Buddha starts from a view of limitation and basic suffering, and ends with the limitless and non-suffering. And the limitless includes limits. Can you manage that? The limitless includes limits. And I mean, even your being here, you've chosen voluntary restriction. So you've chosen to limit yourself. So within your own limitlessness, you've chosen to limit yourself. So every time you say something that has an absolute feel to it, it's not true. The other side is always present, and the two sides are always transcended and manifested in only one place, which is where you stand. I think there's a book called The Perfection of Imperfection, which about sums it up for me, the perfection of imperfection. And equally with the Eightfold Path, the Eightfold Path, and it's one of the basic Buddhist teachings, the Eightfold Path is designed to help us move away from being attached to the self and limitations and the isolation, separateness. But it was never meant, and nothing is meant in this practice, as to fix us into a particular position, a fixed way of being. There's nothing in this tradition that I understand that's like tablets of stone that have been brought down from the mountaintop. And this is the way you should be. Any time that you feel that there is a particular way to be, then already you've limited yourself and you're stuck. And that includes, the very basic tenets of the tradition and the Eightfold Noble Path. So, I'll get back to the original, but for me, essentially, the essence of the practice is we do not seek refuge from our life. We do not consider our life to be limiting, and we do not create problems out of life. Our life is essentially freedom. It's a kind of, it mightn't be the case with how you feel it, and it might be the case how I feel it, but essentially, I didn't like this, but I really like it. Practice is not a movement from inner poverty toward fulfillment, but a pure and natural expression of your own intrinsic freedom. So the daily activities are revelations from the miraculous, and everything becomes an expression of wonder and mystery. So daily activities are revelations from the miraculous. So we don't need to turn water into wine or fishes into... Go on.
I was kind of... What do you mean by freedom in this, when you're using it here? Because I'm not free to fly, I'm not free to be a fish, I'm not free to be sensei, I'm not free to be anyone else, I'm not free to not get sick, I'm not free to die. I'm just wondering
A fish is not free to be Emma.
This is true. So what do you mean by the word free?
I mean, for Emma to be fully fit, for Emma to feel, and only about you, for you to feel able to move freely in the world, unconditioned by previous experience and habits, and I mean, this is an aspiration, you know, it's the ideal, so that you can act freshly in each moment. Because that's finally what we're talking about. We're talking about living on a moment-to-moment basis, and if we can live on a moment-to-moment basis, then all the things that we fret about, for example, about death. We might fret about death, but if we're living on a moment-to-moment basis, what's death got to do with it? You know, you're going to be living on a moment-to-moment basis till you're dead, and you won't even know you're dead, because you know the moment before you die, you're fully engrossed with being whatever's happening for you then. So you know, Dogen's very clear. You know, wood doesn't become ash. Wood is wood, and ash is ash. And he says, life is life, and death is death. So freedom is to be present to each moment. And I'm not offering it as an easy solution, but that's the essence of the practice.
And I think that this in coming to terms with that, I think, and for me this is what this practice is about, is that in this looking for this me and being unable to find it, what the hell is it that dies anyway? You know, this is the question I ask myself.
Yeah. Well, that's the unborn, undying aspect of the two sides of the coin, yeah. But you do die.
But what do you die into?
I give in. I don't know.
Because we are the death that we die into.
Yeah, that's it. Certainly, yeah. There's no. There is.
And it's not living moment to moment, because we are the moment, aren't we? Because that's creating a duality, saying we live
right.
the moment.
You're right. We are the moment. Yeah. So as soon as we consciously choose to live on a moment-to-moment basis, we're already separate from it. Yeah. Which is the. I don't want to jump into the deep water of mindfulness, but that's the difference. You just put your finger on it. Yeah. So this brings me round to the very beginning of what the Buddha realised.
He does have his hand up. He's just got it.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
We lose a lot that's reassuring when we live in the moment.
Yeah.
Because when we don't live in the moment, we've got lots of ideas and lots of fixed things that shore our lives up and reassure us and tell us that things are okay and it's always been like this and it'll always be like this.
Yeah.
And when we let go of that, it can be very, at least I find it very...
It can definitely be scary, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Genpo Roshi used to always talk about, you know, the prison walls that we build for ourselves, around ourselves, so we feel safe inside. And when we start to take them down, it's risky. You know, the people out there might throw stones at us. So, it's true. And it's the same as being happy. I mean, people are fearful of being happy. Because if you to be happy means giving things up that are causing you unhappiness, but they also give you security. So you know, nothing's always as it seems, like the man in the window with the wasps.
I was just going to add to that I find letting the walls down scary, but if I really lived in the moment then I can see that there aren't any people with stones, so it should be fine. And I don't have to,
Yeah,
in the moment there's no problem because there's nothing,
yeah.
there's
The
no
thing-
threats, because threats are always in the future.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We do. I mean, and if we let the walls down, it means that we're letting go of a lot of our ideas of who we are and how people should respond to us and how life should be, and so we're less prone, if you like, to being upset by events in the world, because most of our upset and hurt and unhappiness arises out of the way we feel folk might be in work, or all those things, the damage the self or the ego or hurt us. But if we let go of that idea of a central self that can be hurt, then we're not such a good target for the stones anymore. So what we see as our identity, our small self, is the part of ourselves that always feels like it's on the way out. And it always feels unsettled and threatened. It feels it's on the way out. I mean, it's the source of, I used to suffer it a lot, real panic that life's running away from me, I'm wasting my time and things are happening, Got to be busy, got to have raison d'etre, got to have purpose, got to have function. Because without that, life is just slipping away. How many folks still, I still suffer from that sometimes. But anyone else have that burden on their back? Yeah.
Doesn't help. The thing, I can't remember which point of the day it comes, that time swiftly passes by.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't ever make me feel any better.
Yeah. It's like today's sunny. I remember we used to, 15. How long's Tenshin been coming here? 20 years maybe. Anywhere between 15 and 20 years ago, I would be going crazy if I was in this room and it was sunny outside. I couldn't bear it. I really wanted to be outside. And this room gave me the heebie-jeebies, And I was glad when it was what we had it. We had it. What's the word? When you get you take out evil spirits.
Exercise.
We had it exercise. Yeah, we had this room exercise. Maybe 18 years ago. I don't know why. I was just very sensitive to this space. I'm fine with it now. I'm completely relaxed. I don't have the same anxiety about it being sunny and not really being out there. But some of you may be still suffering from that, and you have my empathy. But you've got all this afternoon. Anyway, this idea of this personal self that always, that's always on its way out, and that's what causes a lot of fret and worry. This is what the Buddha saw, and we've talked about it many times, and he called it suffering. And he came to this realization after taking on the problem of old age, sickness, and death. Old age, sickness, and death. It's a long time ago, and we can personalise it. There was a man, the Buddha, who really took on board seriously the problems of old age, sickness and death, which is a big task. And in the ways of his days, he did lots of ascetic practices, and realised they finally didn't work. And in the end, sat himself under the Bodhi tree, and as a matter of life and death decided he wasn't going to move until he understood this strange business, this strange paradox of both being alive and having, from the day you're born, a death sentence. What does that mean? What's that all about, And what he realised was that he didn't have any intellectual answer. He didn't develop any superpowers. what he realised and what he discovered was his true identity, or his essential self. And it wasn't that he knew something, because if he was a knower, that requires the known, and there's immediately a duality there, there's a separation. He was the known. So, just as I am the Buddha and you are the Buddha listening to the Buddha, and then he had this problem of how could he transmit something that was hard to articulate in words. I can't remember the story, but he was persuaded, wasn't he, by past people he travelled with, that this was a really important thing and he should.
Wasn't it Indra?
Pardon?
Wasn't it Indra, or so it was some god who came and told him that he had to teach?
Ah, is that right? I thought it was he met some people, and he'd obviously so clearly changed that they were really keen to know why, and they were the people he used to travel with who underwent
That's
this.
the secular version.
I think, wasn't he tormented by Mara? Wasn't that the god?
No, later.
No.
That was before he got enlightened, and then he didn't want to teach, and then someone told him he had to, and then he met the old friends, and then...
Oh, I see, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. So the Buddha's realization, his very basic realization, is that everything is one thing. And that we are that one thing. And that there's no separation. And what that one thing is our true identity. And, this is the rub, it's not graspable. It's ungraspable. So as soon as we try and grasp it, it slips out of our hands. It's a bit like, it's a common metaphor, and you've heard it before, but if I said to you, what does your tongue taste like? What would you say? A little. Given your tongue does the tasting, how could it taste? How could it taste itself? How can you know? How can you know your true nature?
I bet you everybody is licking their mouth.
Pardon?
I bet you everybody is licking their mouth.
Yeah. See what it feels like, yeah. And it's the same with wisdom and compassion, we talk about wisdom and compassion, but finally the mysterious things, wisdom and compassion, they kind of arise naturally, and my pragmatic experience is that the less my sense of me has a grip on me, the more I can let it drop. There is more this freely given and available wisdom and compassion that seems to arise, which is a funny thing. And again, it's ungraspable. And yeah. So Steve, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but Steve asked me a question yesterday, which was a great question. I really appreciated the question, which brings this kind of into focus. And he said, well, why should we exercise compassion when, to put it more briefly, nature is full of what's the term? Blood and claw. Blood and tooth and claw. Blood, tooth and claw. Yeah. Well, so why should we exercise compassion? And then that set me thinking, and we had a conversation about it, and I thought about it more. And Steve brought up the idea, the lion kills the zebra. Where's the compassion in that? And I thought, well, if the lion doesn't kill the zebra, where's the compassion for the cubs that it has to feed? And this is the kind of, so what is compassion? Where does it come from? How do you frame it? Is it part of our basic nature? And I think that if we act with compassion, we could. What's that phrase? If you practice what you want to, it will happen if you practice what you want. So you could practice compassion because you'd like to be a more compassionate person. But ideally, within this tradition, practice arises. I'll be with you. Practice arises naturally. So we don't want to be smelly. We don't want to be kind of patronising people by being kind to them. It's the worst. So this wisdom and compassion, it arises out of hopefully, whatever transformation that any of us can manage. And it transcends, our attachment to this, the rootedness of being me or you. Sorry, Tim, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say the idea of the lion and the cubs and the zebra, quite a nice analogy when you first sort of view it like that. But in reality, to feel sorry for the zebra rather than seeing compassionate to the whole thing, it's a question of scale. Real compassion, you have to have a wide, like a proper view of what's really going on. Whereas pity, you can feel sorry for somebody, but that isn't compassion. And you can even act out of feeling, I feel sorry for this person, completely blindly, because you're not looking at the real picture.
The whole picture, yeah. And in fact, one thing that Steve and I talked about, and I mentioned, is that this, I've talked about it before, but our idea of what compassion is, or our idea of how we think the world should be, arises from the personal self. Arises from our expectations of how we think things should be. So our idea of compassion isn't necessarily what is compassionate. So it's a bit like we talked about it before. What we see, what most of us see, except in we're lucky to have a transcendental moment, is we see the back of the tapestry. We see all the knots, or the ugliness, or the rope. We don't see the picture around the front, which is the outcome of the tapestry, and that may be a beautiful picture, which is inherently compassionate. So I remember a blinding realization for me, and it took me a long time. I was very slow. I've talked about it before. About I was really attached to the idea of what's the point of being alive unless the ground of being is good. Unless the ground of being is compassionate and good, then the whole thing seems to be like a game of suffering. And so somebody pointed out to me that that idea came only from the need of the small self, came from my own need, my own wish for things to be a particular way, the way I view kindness.
This is a bit biology, but on a really big scale, the needs of a lion population and a zebra population is to have a healthy ecosystem.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And actually, they are, on the non-individual line, on the longer-term thing, they have the same needs.
Yeah. So, from an ecological point of view, when the system's left, okay, we'll let Steve have a go since it was his question.
I just worry when people start talking about ecosystems, because we don't apply that to human beings. You could equally say, well, just let the starving starve, because there are too many human beings for the ecosystem. It's a very.
Okay.
I feel.
Okay, well, write a piece about the paradox for the website. That'd be fine. Because if we start talking about eco stuff, we could have 45 different opinions.
The Nazis were into the ecology of humans, and we generally didn't like that.
Okay, tell me, what is enlightenment?
So what is
enlightenment?
What is enlightenment?
Yeah. Because this is where there's bandied around. That's an aspiration for people, apparently in Buddhist practice. People who look in and think we should all be calm and happy and constantly, what is it like?
This moment.
This moment, okay. Thank you. This moment.
I don't know, and I think that's a good thing.
You don't know, and you're happy with not knowing.
I think it's healthy because then I have less concepts and stuff.
Okay. Anyone else?
My life.
Your life, yeah.
I was going to say.
Yeah, my life, yeah.
Positionlessness.
I'll read you a few quotes that I've just put down from other people. I am, but there is no me. You are the perceiving, not the perceiver. You are looking for what is looking. That's Francis of Assisi. That which is seeking is the sought. So what they're all saying is that part of you which is looking to be enlightened is already enlightened. And that part of you that's looking, I put down here, it's very simple. It's the direct result of a freedom from the delusion of a separate self. It's as simple as that.
Egoless ego.
Pardon?
An egoless ego.
An egoless ego. And that doesn't mean that there isn't room for self-expression, there isn't room for ego, there isn't room for a separate self, but it's all contained within this one idea, and not idea, reality of complete interdependence and the experience of no self. In this instance, if we call enlightenment, is itself unenlightened if you stay there. Because what's the point of being enlightened if you don't do anything about it? So if suddenly you're sitting feeling happy, then... And I'll be with you in a second, John. I just wanted to say that the one last quote I had was that one Zen master, belly laughing, having had a realization, said, "Is that all it is? Is that all it is?" Sorry, John.
Sorry, I was just going to misquote one of our Sangha members some time ago. Just that enlightenment is probably the most unhelpful word in the English language.
Okay. Was he enlightened?
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody else said, it's like looking for your glasses when they're perched on your head. And how funny it is when you find it, when you find them. Yeah.
Just add something to that. I think the intention of that clearly, saying that it is one of the most unhelpful words in the language, is that the very existence of the word suggests that there is something that therefore has to be attained.
Yeah.
Just the existence of that word by itself.
Yeah, creates this need or wish, a sense of loss, yeah.
I can't remember who it was that said there are no enlightened people, just enlightened activity. That took a real sort of load off.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't me that had to get enlightened. All I had to do was what came next.
Yeah.
That was helpful.
But there's some behind you. I can only see the redness of your beard and your broad hair. If you were wearing a kilt, I'd be nervous. You'd be after me. Thank you. I'm going to read you a story, and I've headed the story, "The Shit is the Gold." It's about a woman at an inn. There it goes. I'm going to read it to you. Oh, it's from a book called The Rhinoceros Horn, I think.
Me.
Pardon?
Bring me the rhinoceros.
The what?
Bring me the rhinoceros.
Bring me the rhinoceros, yeah. Bring me the rhinoceros. Thank you. God, you're well read in this room.
From John Camp.
You ready?
Yeah.
Great book. Love it. Very nice guy, yeah. So there was a woman who kept a pilgrim's inn at Hara under Mount Fuji. Her name is unknown, and it is not known when she was born or died. She's one of those anonymous women that have been left out of history that we try and include in the sutra when we say, I've forgotten the phrase we use. But, yeah. Anyway. Pardon? Oh yeah. Thank you. She went to hear a talk by Hakuin, who said, "They say there's a pure land where everything is only mind, and that there's a Buddha of light in your own body. Once that Buddha of light appears, mountains, rivers, earth, grass, trees and forests suddenly glow with a great light. To see this, you have to look inside your own heart. Then what should you be looking out for when you are looking for something that is only mind? What kind of special features would it have? When you are looking for the Buddha of infinite light in your own body, how would you recognize it?" When she heard this, the woman said, This isn't so hard. Back at home, she meditated day and night, holding the question while she was awake and during her sleep. One day, as she was washing a pot, she had a sudden breakthrough. She threw the pot aside and rushed to see Hakuin. She said, "I've met the Buddha in my own body, and everything on earth is shining with a great light. It's wonderful." And she danced for joy. "Is that so?" said Hakuin. "But what about a pit of shit? Does it also shine with a great light?" The woman ran up and slapped him and said, "You still don't get it, do you, you old fart?" Hakuin roared with laughter. So, what does that story mean for you? Let me just say the killer line. Hakuin said to her, "She's dancing for joy because she's got the great light," and he says, "But what about a piece of shit? Does it also shine with great light?" She slapped him and said, "You old fart, you still haven't got it." And he roared with laughter. What's that about? Anyone take on that? What's the essence of this story?
It's about your life right now. This is it. And even if it's shining or whatever, or even if it's full of shit and all the rest of it, just do it.
Okay. Yeah?
I think that she has got it, and she thinks from his question that he thinks shit that isn't full of light, and that's why she slaps it. Whereas actually he's testing her.
So what does that mean about your own life?
Well, he's made a distinction, and she just slapped him for making a distinction.
Yeah. And then he rose with laughter.
I think it's also about clinging to ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you cling to an idea, you deserve a slap, is that right? A personal, I mean, like one to yourself, yeah. Anyone else? What's this about?
Sounds like I think the references to slapping or hitting in Zen practice are quite sort of difficult to appreciate sometimes, but is an ultimate statement by the woman, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a statement back to him, so get a load of that.
Yeah.
What are you going to say about this?
It's a statement of equality.
Yeah.
And in our culture, it mightn't be a big deal. I mean, you might come into the interview room and slap me, and it mightn't be a big deal. But for you, it'd be a big deal for me. It'd be painful. I wish you wouldn't do it. I hope you wouldn't do it. Poor old Genpo had a bad neck for about 5 years, and somebody grappled him to the ground out of irritation. But he wouldn't tell them the essence of life. No, this is Dogen said, "Be blocked by the way. The way includes being blocked and cannot be escaped. It is beautiful and ugly. The way is everywhere you look, and you cannot escape it. And that includes the pit of shit." Of course, we all would like to avoid that. We'd all like to have something we can hold on to, something that will comfort us at any time, every day, and we go to all kinds of lengths to achieve these things, so that we always know that we will be safe and comforted and won't come up against, or rather, what also happens is that we can feel, if we are having a tough time, we can feel guilty. I shouldn't be having a tough time. This means that maybe I'm not leading my life in the correct way. Maybe I've made a mistake. Maybe I'm not, a good student on the spiritual path. And of course, I spoke with somebody earlier about that. Yeah, we spoke about it. Yeah, that even this is even when you're giving yourself a bad time. This is another it's a subtle manifestation of ego. When you think you shouldn't be having a difficult or tough time, or you shouldn't be in the shit. You know, it's another. It's the idea that I'm so special and I'm so good that I shouldn't be. I shouldn't be failing and suffering. I shouldn't make mistakes. I shouldn't be vulnerable. It's just another. It's a paradox because it sounds like it's a kind of, but it's another manifestation of ego.
Can I just say one other thing? There was something that I think you said the last time we were at a session, and that was it's worth remembering that there isn't a path. There is no spiritual path.
No.
And your life doesn't have to look a certain way at all.
No, Tenshin says you don't have to look a certain way, and
Yeah,
it's
I
true.
agree.
But yeah, there is this paradox that the spiritual life is a journey. And of course, if it's a journey, it means that it's separate from your life. It's something that's going to happen in the future. What's that phrase on the wall back in Maryland Street? There's graffiti on the wall, remember, just past the car park? I think it says, the journey is the destination.
Yeah.
Is that right, Seth? The journey is the destination. Yeah. So the question is, how do you really appreciate your life? And how do you fully live it? And it's not about seeing something, it's not about standing apart from something, it's just about being present. And why is it so hard? I find it hard. Why is it so hard? It's funny business, isn't it? I mean, at some point, it seems to me it's a bit like, we get attached to things. We learn coping mechanisms when we're small. Which are really useful when we're small, particularly if we've got, violent parents or people who are oppressing us. We learn techniques to kind of, keep ourselves small in the corner away from trouble, or other ways of coping, and then we bring them into our adult life and they're no longer appropriate, they don't work. We can let them go, but they're grooved in the system. And I wonder whether, this attachment to the self has obviously been really useful in the development of, of human beings and progress. At some point, we're the only, as I understand, I may be wrong, but the only life form that developed self-consciousness at some point down the line. Is that wrong?
I don't think so. A lot of animals can recognise themselves in the mirror. I know cats can't,
Yeah,
but elephants can.
It's all a question of degree, though, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some kind of...
On the spectrum, we are very much aware that we exist and that we will die. And I'm not sure. And so that must have been very useful, and I guess it's still very useful in other parts of the world, because it's what creates progress. But it's a bit like the child that learned coping mechanisms when it was young. For the human race, we've learned this way of separation and duality that in fact doesn't work for us anymore. But that's nothing to do with Zen. That's just spending too much time thinking in bed. Probably got no foundation at all. So ignore that bit. Has anybody got any?
If we can't make a decision to be present in the moment, what choices or decisions can we make?
We can make a decision to have that intention. We can make a decision to awaken to.
But that
being
intention
present
itself, that's not a bad thing. It's gonna.
No, I think having the intention. The problem with practice is that as soon as we make a defined willed intention, we immediately bring in the opposite. We immediately bring in a possible kickback from the self. We polarize it. So, ideally, practice is like it's a very careful line that we walk of intention, without and allowing things to arise and remaining aware, and not giving ourselves a bad time. So it's a tricky kind of subtle But I think carrying the intention is all we can do, because sometimes we're going to lose it and fail. You know?